Today we are taking a look at Andrew. I don't know if it's Huberman. I'm not sure. Um,
Huberman, surely.
who? Oh, I don't know. It could
It's
be
gonna be
Huberman.
Huberman.
Well, I didn't say that. I said Huberman or Huberman.
Huberman.
Or okay, well, I don't know. Maybe someone will in this interview. Maybe he'll say his name. Although I think we're going to start it a little later. Anyway, we're going to have a look at this guy, and this is by viewer request. So thank you to the person who requested him. It's another interesting one. Love these requests because they bring people to us that we wouldn't have probably found on our own. But anyway, he is an American neuroscientist and associate professor in the Department of Neurobiology at the Stanford University School of Medicine, who has made many contributions to the brain development, brain plasticity, and neuroregeneration and repair fields. Most of his work is focused on the visual system. So you can read more about him if you want in his Wikipedia page. All right.
Okay, let's see what type he is.
Yes, well, we already know, obviously. So does everyone else who's watching this because it's in the title.
Don't ruin it.
Yeah.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
And you're like a magnet as opposed to an opposite magnet resisting these things that you need and want.
Pursuit is very taxing. And the reason is that there's a biochemical reason for this. Is it's like wandering in the desert not knowing if there's water at all. That's really depleting. I mean, epinephrine is in the brain, and its chemical equivalent in the body is adrenaline. Those are the same thing. And if you're constantly in pursuit, right, you're just pursuing external goals, external goals, it will wear your nervous system down. You will be exhausted, and one will eventually run aground. You become mentally depressed. The key is to figure out what are the rewards that you can acquire along the way internally. Remember, it's subjective. There can also be external rewards because many things have milestones, a Series A or a Series B for a company, then the IPO right later.
Reaching a million users or doing this,
We have engagements before we have weddings typically, right?
Yeah.
There are those rare instances where people just go and get married, but typically there's a lot of buildup that is designed, that fortunately, provides these reward mechanisms. So the key thing is that you can't just be all gas pedal all the time without rewarding yourself. However, the reward, that dopamine, is so powerful because it actually, as I mentioned before, it actually is the chemical substrate for epinephrine.
So, the other doctor, that Jean Dial guy, another request we had, I can't help but think of him because it's the same interviewer and the same field of research, and I just think like how they differ.
Yes.
I think it's important because Jean Diel was a TE dominant, and this man is a TI dominant.
Right.
And I think it's interesting to compare that because I think people get confused.
Right.
What do they type?
Well, that's interesting. Right. They type them as ENTJ because they are seeing, I guess, the dominant thinking.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
TI with SE, not TE.
With NI. Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the first difference I would probably mention is he's just so more like I guess friendly. I'm not to say that Jean Dial was like, rude or anything, but he was just so more intense. I think like you could see that he had like a passion for like going on about things like TE does.
Yes.
This guy's just a bit different. He's to me, I see more FE. He's enjoying himself, but from a interaction perspective, I think, rather than I'm talking about something I love, which I'm very familiar with because I do this.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and of course, this is another, we'll talk about this in the future, but you were saying kind of how feeling does drive the thinking. So,
Right. Yeah.
hmm so that's kind of to your point, what you just said. All right, you want to watch
Let's
a little bit more?
continue. Okay. Go.
It creates a reservoir of more energy. And again, I'm not talking about caloric energy or glycogen.
Mind energy.
It's mental energy. It's the desire to push on. It's the desire to keep going. And
So
again,
we need some consistent dopamine hits throughout the days or our months to give us more energy to pursue.
that's right.
But we don't want to be over pursued because then we'll burn out.
That's right. And so everyone has to find where that sweet spot is, that kind of, on the freeway driving where it's really smooth and seamless, where you're not on the accelerator the whole time, where you're in a gear that's appropriate. And, we're talking now in terms of sort of, neuroscience lens on these things, but the key is always going to be practices. It's going to be, just as earlier we're talking about bringing stress levels up or down, depending on, or alertness levels up or down, depending on the kind of stress you're experiencing. The reward system is great because let's say you're a person that can very easily access this dopamine reward. So you're always excited. People say, hey, let's do this. And your mantra is,
He's just so different from Jean Diel. Like he has to reach more.
Yes.
And
yes.
T it just doesn't do that as much. He's trying to grasp for a way to articulate himself. I mean, he's doing obviously a great job, but it's different from Jean Diel because he was just so more like boom, 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 boom. He was just there, He's just it's just so different.
Yeah, and I've said this before. I mean, to me, it's about how the thinking feels, really. Like TE, I just feel like I'm constantly getting slapped in the face. It's just so aggressive. Whereas TI is just not as aggressive.
No.
It's just it's more. I don't know. I probably have to think of a word for it. It's just not as aggressive to me. It doesn't feel like that.
No, it's just softer, isn't it?
It's softer.
Like, hey, listen to what I have to say here. But she is more like, this is how it is. This is how it is.
I know, right. Sit down and listen to me, and then it's just bam, bam, bam. You just keep getting hit in the face with thoughts, one right after the other. That's just how it feels to me. And
it's the
this
way.
This is just more relaxed to me.
T is the way we say it. It's like there's no room for negotiation. So I think it puts people in a sort of a frame of mind where they're just like, oh, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Right.
And TI is just a bit like it gives you the option to disagree.
Yeah.
And it's just nicer and kinder and more considerate.
Right, because the feeling drives the thinking because of the FE. Exactly, that's exactly right. You can't really separate them. It's hard to do that.
No, what a TE perspective is like. I've thought about it. It all works out. It's great. I'm going to say it confidently, and they're going to believe me because that's the way it is.
Right.
I'm right. Or at least, if it's not I'm right, it's I've thought about it and I'm confident about it, so challenge me. Let's go.
Yes.
Okay, let's go again. 3, 2, 1, go.
Let's go. And you just kind of go. What we call in science very low activation energy. You just go. That's great. Those people do run the risk of burnout. Although there are these people that we occasionally encounter that just seem to have boundless energy for everything, and they tend to get a lot more done because they have a lot more internal reward. And you'll notice they're getting rewards from all the little things, and it's 100% subjective. It's like hearing funny jokes all day long. You can just keep going. Incidentally, the beginning of relationships when people fall in love, it's a real thing, but it is associated with a big flood of dopamine in the system. Makes everything seem exciting and possible and new. And I think that we also know other people that they have a very hard time accessing this dopamine system, and they either place it under the complete control of external things, so they're miserable until they get the payoff, and then sometimes they're even miserable then, or they really just don't they haven't learned the skills of how to access it.
So how do we trick our mind to find rewards in subjective things that aren't actually physically coming to us?
Okay, so I'll tell a brief anecdote about an experiment that's really important. This was done many years ago in a psychology department.
Okay, so to kind of play devil's advocate, if someone is convinced, okay, this guy's TI dominant, how does he differ from an INTP? And so I think, again, I'm going to go back to our playlist. Granted, we only have one because we're just starting out, but we will continue adding them. But if you watch him and then watch Rowan Atkinson, you can see the difference between TI with intuition versus TI with sensing. So I think if you compare these two, you'll be able to see that, the distinction between the two. You can see the TI, but you can just see how it manifests through intuition or sensing. So I just wanted to point that out. And another thing that I wanted to say, which I find fascinating, is I think there's, again, it's stereotypes, right? I mean, a lot of the ISTP stereotypes are that they, that they like to break things down and understand things mechanically. It's that TI with the SE.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stereotypes are, and you do see it, like the kind of the typical maybe car mechanic, or I don't know, I can't even think of anything off the top of my head when I want to, of course. But this is interesting because this is a very different example of an ISTP who has chosen the brain as his thing to break down and study.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I looked at another interview, and the reason he's in this is because of his father.
Yes, right.
His father was also a scientist, and he told him, he said, you go into it too, but don't study what I do. You study the brain. His father put the idea into his head. And so he's kind of, this is his car engine, if you will. It's the brain.
Yes, I believe his dad said that every day he goes into work, he feels, the day before he feels like it's his birthday.
Yeah, Christmas. That's right.
Christmas, was it? Oh.
Oh, it could have been his birthday. I don't know now, but you're right. He loved his job so much.
Yeah.
Right.
And then Andrew was like, wow, that's what I'm going to do. And then his dad said, oh, well, I'll probably have sussed it all out by the time you ready.
Right.
So
that's right.
Do the brain.
So do something else. Yeah, right. There's lots to be discovered with the brain.
Yes.
And it probably intrigued his mind, like, wow, there is a lot here to learn about and study. I can rip this whole system, this whole little engine, this brain that drives the body. I can study it in all angles.
Well, I think ISTP, they do tend to be very good children as well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time, they.
Yes.
His dad said, "Oh, do the brain." He said, "Okay," and then off he goes.
Yes.
If that was an INTJ child, it'd be like, yeah,
I know.
I'll do what I want.
Yes. And obviously he's very successful at what he does. But yeah, so I think we're good, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you can also, if you're not sure, because he was typed as ENTJ, you can look at our playlist. We were looking at him yesterday and kind of laughing because if you just go to the playlist and look at the thumbnails,
yes.
you can see something in them.
I think there's this sort of archetype in people's minds about, this thing about school, your school days, right? You knew there was you meet a lot of people and you knew there were types of people, right?
Yes.
And, kids are always coming up with words to describe each other in very uncharitable ways and things, like dork and nerd and jock and, there's loads of these sort of archetypes. And if you go to the ISFJ female playlist, look at all their faces and tell me they're not the same girl in school. Because they are.
Yeah. Right. All right.
Okay.
Okay, so ISTP for Andrew.
Huberman.
Yes. So thank you to the person who suggested it. It was a great one. We enjoyed this one a lot.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, thanks. Have a great day.